Alrighty. Parshas Mishpatim, this is a continuation of last week where we started discussing the very, very fundamental ideas of Chochma and Ratzon. We have to all publicly thank Rabbi Daniel Barron. Mrs. Barron is here because he has been transcribing the yissurim of Rav Moshe Shapiro for so many years, and now, since the Patira of Rav Moshe Zichrono Livracha, he's going back to the old yissurim, and what he sent around for this past Shabbos is fully attached in your handouts, the entire shir, which is worth reading. It contains more than what we're going to do today, but the ideas that we're touching on today are in there, and it's so eye-opening, so clarifies so many things. As usual, Rav Moshe helps us see things clearly, opens up doors, and once one door is open, you'll all know this, another 100 doors open, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to review the fundamental principles of Chochma and Ratzon quickly. We worked on them last week. You have to go back to last week's share to really fully get them. We're just going to review them, and then we're going to go further. We're going to find a couple of things in this week's parsha that are beautiful extensions of the idea that we're working with. So we said that the forces in play, the handouts over here. The forces, hello Eva. The forces that are in play. The first of all forces, the force that brought the world into existence, is called Ratzon, pure will. We distinguished it, from human will, in that when we think about Ratzon having a desire or will for something, it's almost impossible to think about that idea without associating it with wanting, needing, lacking. So when somebody wants something and they need something, then they have a desire, and then they create that thing, or they acquire that thing, or they make plans or put into motion the methods and what they need to do to have that thing. So once they have that thing, that's a change. Now they have it. However, we said when we talk about Hashem bringing the world into existence, we cannot in any way associate Hashem's Ratzon with lack or need or change, because Hashem is emes, and emes doesn't change. If it changes, it's not emes. If it's one thing yesterday, another thing tomorrow, it's not emes. Remember? We talked about Aristotle and how he could not accept the concept of Ratzon, right? And he doesn't accept it, and how Rambam, and we showed you can look it up online, the Morning Ruchim, many chapters deal with this. It's all in last week's notes, the sources and not just the actual sources, but where to look for this in the Rambam. But Rambam says no, there's Ratzon, because if you don't have Ratzon, then what you end up with is strictly a world of Chochma. Chochma is the mind of God. It is true that the entire Bria is the mind of God, and therefore it is perfect. Every single aspect of the Bria, meaning the physical, what is involved in the organic physical world, every single thing from the galaxies to the subatomic particles, everything in the metaphysical world that Hashem created, all the spiritual beings, everything that is associated, that is non-tangible, but associated with keeping this world in order, all the rules of physics, all the rules of genetics, all the rules of anatomy and physiology, every single thing that operates in this world, physical and beyond the physical, metaphysical, all of that as a whole is the mind of God. And by that, it is perfect, and it is emes. And it runs perfectly. But it's the Ratzon that brought that into being. Remember, Aristotle had a problem with this. Rambam establishes it's the Ratzon that brought the Chochma into being. Ratzon creates Chochma. Ratzon is pure Bechira, and not a function of lack, need, or change. It is Yesh Me'ayin. It's not coming from a trigger. It's pure Ratzon. We say creation is God's Chochma, the mind of God. With Ratzon, Chochma was created. We are calling Chochma the system. The entire system, the mind of God, the Bria itself, is a perfect system. What did we say about miracles? Remember, we re-included in handout 1, what was in last week about miracles. If the entire system, let's explain what that means. The entire system is the mind of God. That means that this system is composed of all the forces we just described, okay, which operate according to chukim, rules of teva that Hashem set up. The whole story of Bereshis. Okay, the 10 mamaros, everything Hashem created in this world, b'shem Elokim, which is gematria hateva, nature. These rules operate and they include, as we said, all the creation, including the metaphysical. They work on a system, they work perfectly. Into the mix, Hashem also added human bechira. Human bechira means the composite of every choice that every human being ever made from the first human being until this moment. Every human being makes a choice which triggers something in the system, which triggers something else and triggers something else, and it goes on throughout all of history, all of time, across it having effects and counter effects and additional effects through, all in terms of every single thing that exists is part of this whole system and is affected by it. All human choices that were ever made by anyone, and the effects of those choices on everything and everyone, and how the system responds to the positive choices and the negative choices, and how the composite of the entire system plus all of human bechira, how that all is inevitably going towards a very specific destination and a goal and a single end, which is that eventually this whole Bria and all the choices everybody made in it will reveal the one and only truth, that the Chochma of Hashem, the system is the Chochma, and the system was brought about by Ratzon. In other words, it's going to reveal Ratzon, the highest madrega. Okay? And Hashem has a Ratzon for humanity. What is Hashem's Ratzon for us, His will for us? That's what we said about the Nefesh HaChaim. Hashem created us, called us Tselem, Elokim, creators, and gave us a neshama. Vayi adam lenefesh chaya. You were a living spirit. The Nefesh Chaim says, we didn't do this last week, so listen. We are the neshama of the entire system. We give life to the entire system. Adam, man, in the perfect form, operating perfectly, creates everything that happens in the system. I included again the Nefesh HaChaim for you to look at. He says, what Hashem says in Tselem Elokim, it means that every thought, speech, and action that we do, every single choice we make, affects the system, affects the Bria on all kinds of levels, for good and for bad. And if you could pull back the veil, and you could see, which nobody could see, not even Moshe Rabbeinu, it was too big, too much, you could see the composite, the totality of every human choice, its effect on the system. It's the negative choices, the positive choices, its effects on others and their effects on others, and the entire thing. You could explain every single thing that ever happened to anybody or any animal or anything in this world. But the Ratzon of Hashem is that this system, if it's treated correctly, if it is respected, if it's allowed to go, to run properly and to hum along, it will be the way, the channel through which Hashem's Ratzon flows to us, His love and desire and connection to us, His yachas to us, and our connection to Hashem will there'll be no interference with it. We said that miracles, let's remember this, miracles are not Hashem interfering with the system. They are stipulations in the system, correct? Go back to last week to hear about that. They're built into the system. They're not interferences in the system. All right? It's meant to work like that. Here's where we have to, this week's parsha, Mishpatim, is Naaseh V'nishma. Look at Shemos 24/7 on page 440. Okay? When we said Naaseh V'nishma, which does not appear, by the way, last week in Yisro, it's Naaseh once, Naaseh twice, and then in this week's parsha, we get the final Naaseh V'nishma. When Am Yisrael said Naaseh V'nishma, what we agreed to after the Yam Suf and after the great revelation that was happening, there's a machlokas here before, after, but definitely after Yam Suf and coming to Har Sinai, we got a glimpse, more than any human being, a regular person got more of a peek into the entire system and how it works than Yechezkel, who saw and recorded for us what is called the Naaseh V'nishma, which is how it all works together, the divine chariot. When we saw this, we said, Naaseh V'nishma, we promised to trust, to buy in, to commit, to trust the system. We'll do whatever we're supposed to, and then we'll slowly, it comes later, we'll begin through using the system correctly, letting it hum along and do its job. We will get to learn and hear how it really works. But it's like Shabbos. You can't just theorize about Shabbos. You got to keep it correctly to know what it does for you. So we'll do it, and then we'll understand it. Okay? When we said Naaseh V'nishma, this is the key. Am Yisrael achieved what Mekubalim call the tzuras ha'adam, the perfect contours of what Adam should be. Humanity accepting the system, not just accepting the system as slaves to a master. When we said Naaseh V'nishma, Hashem gave us the keys to the entire system. Anyone who accepts the Torah. The Jewish people did it, Har Sinai, and all the people that have joined the Jewish people, and it's open to everyone. We are not exclusive. We do not discriminate against anyone. Anybody can accept the system, and then when a person is makabel Torah, accepts Torah, they get the keys, which means that the mitzvahs, both positive and, God forbid, violation of them, have a very powerful effect on the system. They keep it either running smoothly, or, God forbid, they tamper with the system. Okay, we're going to get to that right now, okay? This is what we spoke about last week. This is all in A. We also mentioned Shasani Kirtzono. If we women are putter from certain mitzvos, it means they are not required by the system to create, to do anything. They're not required. The system will run along without it. And it'll be perfect. And we say, Shasani Kirtzono, there is a Ratzon, okay, that we connect to, that it doesn't necessitate us going through the same specific paths as men go through to operate the system. Remember, did we talk about hiring a rabbi? Yeah, we did. Right, go back and listen to that. Okay, that mashal that we gave. Now we're going into B, okay? Applications of the ideas of Ratzon and Chochma. The Naaseh V'nishma. Okay, it's a horse and a chariot. When you see the horse, right, that's what the Mekubalim saw, a whole celestial vision. What they referred to, there's nothing practical or literal, tangible up there. It's the imagery that the Nevi'im used to describe the concepts. They were using mashalim, right? But the mashalim they used was a horse and a chariot, the divine chariot. There's a horse. When you see the horse, you say the horse is pulling the chariot. Look at all the energies exerting. This is humanity, all our efforts, free choices, everything we do. But actually, the driver in the chariot is directing the horse. So it's the combination of the freedom, the rules, the laws, the system, and Hashem's Ratzon in the end, driving it to where it wants to go. That was it's too big for any human being. Even Moshe asked to be pleased to get a glimpse of the whole thing. He said, Horeini na es kvodach, and Hashem said, you can't. It's too big. I'll give you a little glimpse. He told him the 13 midos rachamim. It means the system is driven by chesed and rachamim. And the Ratzon of Hashem in the end is chesed and rachamim, that we as Am Yisrael should partner with Hashem to run the system, which is the greatest rachamim of all. If we let it run smoothly, it will flow, it will work, and we will all have experienced a direct connection to Hashem as Hashem's partners. And we'll have all the eternity of God and the life force of God and the creativity of God flowing through us. And this is when, and all of Kabbalah today is just a continuation of the ideas that the Nevi'im saw when they saw the Naaseh V'nishma. So working with that. Hold on, wait, let me run through. I'm sorry, because there's so much to do. Now, I want you to think about this. We're not going to spend too much time with it. This is an application. We say Hashem created the world out of pure Ratzon, all right? It's not like human Ratzon. Almost every single desire that a person has, is not coming as an act of pure yesh me'ayin, something or nothing. It's really just a reaction to a trigger. Every time a person says, I want this or I need this, they have to ask themselves why. Generally, there's an explanation. Okay? I'm choosing to eat this because I'm hungry. That's really not an act of free choice. I want this outfit. Why do you want an outfit? I know I don't need it. So why do you want it? There's an emotional need. There's some kind of psychological need. There's a peer pressure need. I don't know what. There's a need. When do we ever get to make a choice that is not because we need something or lack something? Okay? And it's not that and it doesn't contradict the MS. Remember, MS is that it doesn't ever change. When does a person make a choice that is not it's not change, it's not a lack, and it's not a need? The only time a person acts freely, b'chir or chavshis, is when a person commits to respecting, to buying in, to respecting, to attaching themselves to the system. Ein lecha ben chorin, you have nobody who's free except someone who's makabel Torah mitzvahs. They can act freely. Not from peer pressure, not for threat of somebody's going to punish them, or society won't like them, or community will ostracize them. None of those reasons.
A lot of people do it for that.
It's called yiras, not yiras ha'onesh. Yiras ha'chet. You don't want to tamper with the system. And therefore, you want it to work. For yourself and for everyone. Remember Nathan Hale, lahavdil, I regret that I have but one life to give for my country, right? There are people that understand. These are the great people, the tzaddikim and the tzidkanios, okay? The great people that understand that the more perfect a person is, the more medactic they are with the mitzvahs, the more they're careful to avoid the averos, they become more important to the system. They have more of an effect on the system. This is why tzaddikim are very, very medactic with themselves, meticulous with themselves. They are careful with themselves. Not just because they don't want to do anything wrong. They understand that when a person is a tzaddik yisod olam. It's the yisod, it's the foundation the world relies on. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu is medactic with the tzaddikim. Because they are more partners. They have more of an effect on the system. Tzaddik goes there, a tzaddik could decree something, and Hashem will fulfill it. Partnership. And when Hashem is medactic with tzaddikim, the tzaddikim don't complain. The other people can't handle it. But the tzaddikim understand that what's happening here is much bigger than themselves. What's happening here is they are playing a role that is fundamental to restoring the system, either to its proper operation if it's being tampered with, or they're triggering it in a better way, which we'll understand. Rambam says in Bracha V'Klala, which is in attachment 3, okay, which you're going to read later. You must read all this stuff later. You must. Okay, it's a command. It's your homework.
We'll text you next week.
Rambam says in the Laws of Tshuva, under the section here, just quickly turn to it, okay? Yes, it's right here, attachment 3. Rambam speaks about bracha and klala, and he says, okay, the bracha is not schar, which is the next world. Okay, there's something called schar, which is in the next world, and that we've spoken about a lot in this class, which is when a person finally gets that veil pulled away and they get a glimpse of the entire system and every single part of it, to the extent that they have the capacity to see that, the dots they've achieved. Rambam says, bracha and klal in this world, that the rain should fall and the crops will grow and there'll be prosperity and there'll be no illness and there'll be no war and there'll be no distraction. That's not the pulling away of the curtain. That's the system working perfectly in this world. You're supposed to do the mitzvahs here, and he says happily. Happily, because you're a partner with God. It's not some master commanding a servant who begrudgingly obeys. That's not what it's supposed to be. This is that we get it, as the Nefesh HaChaim says. We are the we trigger the system. We run the system. We are the soul of the world. okay? And this is the soul gives the human being life, we give the world life. And Rambam says, if you do this, if you keep the mitzvahs, play your role properly, knowing what it is, the system will work beautifully. The rain will fall, crops will grow, everything. There will be no interference in the system. But if you don't, you start violating things and not doing what you have to do, the system is not going to work the way it's supposed to work. And you're going to find that it's things that happen which we call ra, bad. Now what is ra? Moshe always taught this. What is ra? Ra is ra'ua. Ra'ua, like kisei ra'ua, sulam ra'ua. Kisei ra'ua is a chair that's wobbly because it only has 3 legs. Or a sulam ra'ua is a wobbly ladder because it's not balanced. Ra'ua, ra means it doesn't work. It's not working right. It can't do its job. When ra happens, it means the system can't work the way it's supposed to work. But it's not that the system is dismantled or goes haywire. No. Built into this system is restorative measures. So what happens when someone tampers with the system? For example, in our human bodies, you want to keep your kidneys healthy. But in case a person doesn't keep their kidneys healthy, you go to dialysis. Now dialysis is not good, but it's what you have to do if you got to do it. But or if there's a cure, a person gets themselves unhealthy, whatever, they have to cure themselves somehow, some way. The cure might be bitter, the cure might be painful, the cure might be surgery, the cure might be who knows what, okay? But the cure is part of restoring the system. In the system is built all types of measures to make sure that the system is restored and it can continue running, okay? Rambam is telling us in this whole section about bracha and klola, okay? The first thing that will happen if you don't do the mitzvahs properly is it's not gonna flow. The system's not gonna hum along. And in fact, there's gonna be now wars and poverty and stress and fear and illness. Where's this coming from? Okay, it doesn't. Now we say this is very important. Now we're talking about yissurim. When somebody or Am Yisrael as a whole experience these things, part, not all, because part of what we're looking at is a system that is not working correctly. The bracha tells us how beautiful and utopic it could be. And Rambam says there were times like this. Read it. There were times like this. Crops and health and peace.
For the world?
For Am Yisrael first of all, and what happens to Am Yisrael often has an effect on, but for Am Yisrael. And even in our lives we have patches like this. And even of course in Jewish history there are patches like this. Rambam says it really works in this world. It really does. The system just flows, and when the system is working, then he says, what happens? Then you have you have no stress, you have no pressure, you don't have to devote all your energy and your money and your manpower to the military, to medicine, to all these measures that you have to take because things are not working. And instead, you have time to learn and do mitzvahs and create your attachment to Hashem. That's how it's supposed to be. And if the system isn't working, it's not okay. But again, there are measures in store, and we're going to get to tefillah, of course, soon. The role of a tzaddik and a tzaddikah, okay, is sometimes they suffer more than others of what we call suffering. Eov is a classic example, okay? Eov could be a mashal. Eov is probably written by Moshe Rabbeinu, who dealt with this issue more than everyone because he's bringing us Torah. He's got to help us see this, deal with this issue of people suffering. And Eov was tested. He didn't pass his test. The suffering is, although this is fundamental. Moshe is going to say it in the handout you have that's attached. Suffering, we always say to people, it's a kapara. Right? It doesn't mean Hashem doesn't love you. It's a tikkun. We want to say these type of things. Right? By Eov, it was none of the above. It was what's called yissurim shel ava, just yissurim, to see if Eov will still trust Hashem, despite the fact that he doesn't understand what's happening to him. Okay? Yissurim are necessary for whatever reason. and to whoever they befall, right? These are necessary somehow, some way in the big picture. If we could see the entire thing, we would understand it. At the end of Iyov, Hashem pulls back the curtain, the last few chapters, and there's a 5-part series on Iyov from the Young Israel Woodmere from 2 summers ago, which is online, and we deal with this. At the end of Iyov, Hashem pulls back the veil, and he sees the whole thing. In fact, if you look at it, he actually gets a glimpse behind the scenes of energy. He gets matter and energy, how they interact, physics, and all of nature, and animal life, and botany and biology and everything. He sees the whole thing, and human choices, and the distribution of suffering. He sees the whole thing, and Iyov says, okay, this is too big. I cannot possibly comprehend all of this, but one thing I know for sure, I'm in good hands. I trust the whole thing. Everything has a place. Everything is part of the whole big picture. And then Iyov says, it was worth going through my suffering just to see this and to know that I'm at peace, that I could be at peace, despite the fact that I don't exactly understand my particular story, what's happening to me. What happens when we tamper with the system? So tzaddikim and tzidkaniah, great, great people, they accept yissurim, which helps fix it. They accept upon themselves yissurim, which help rectify the system somehow, some way. And besides yissurim, we have instructions. What do you do when you realize that this is not only for ourselves but for the world? Just like people care about the environment. So a person says, I'm not going to use styrofoam, I'm not going to use glass, disposable stuff. And everybody says to them, well, you're a little not using plastic. What's that going to do? But the person is still, I have to do my part for the system. So that's, and as we said, Nathan Hale, that's why I quoted him. I'd rather have just one life to give for my country. Well, I got to do what I can do. So too, in Ruchnius, we do what we can do to fix things, to make things better, to make things stronger and more correct. We do what we can do. One of the measures Chazal tell us, first of all, sur meira, to stop tampering with the system. Don't keep making it sicker. And asay tov. Okay, that's number one. And here we're going to get into tshuva, tefillah, and Shabbos, which is mentioned in this week's parsha. Okay. We talked about tshuva. Let's talk about tshuva. Tefillah we'll deal with next. Shabbos we spoke about, by the way. Remember what we said? Meleches machshavas. The only things that are usher on Shabbos, really that are called mechal Shabbos, chil Shabbos, are things that you do with intention. If you walk down the street and step on an ant, you're not mechal Shabbos, right? And the only thing that is mechal Shabbos is you intentionally do something that's usher on Shabbos. Kavana, Ratzon, interest. We said on Shabbos we're supposed to experience the perfect functioning of the whole system. We already prepared our food, our clothing, and our shelter, right? We're not busy. This is kind of like Rambam's time of bracha. You're not busy worrying about your food. You're not busy worrying about if you're protected, if you're in shelter. You're not busy worrying about your clothing, your needs, your wants, your physical urgent needs. You're not busy. It's like all the bracha has flowed. You have everything you need. Nothing's on your mind. So now you're free. Look what Shabbos is. You prepared it all. So now you're free to think, to listen to your soul, to sing, to learn, to dress. Because of that we dress differently. We go to shul, we have a suda. It's all different. It's when the Chochma has done its job and allows us to connect to Ratzon. And the Ratzon, Hashem's Ratzon and our Ratzon are connected, and actually it's even beyond that. It's really a glimpse of Olam Haba, which is, we always say Me'ein Olam Haba. It's almost like seeing, connecting to the place before the Ratzon, the will of Hashem, even brought the system, the Chochma, into being. Chochma and Ratzon are at peace. We don't do malacha, and we don't even do things that show Ratzon. It's almost like before that, the highest level of closeness to God possible, even before. The first initiative, the first Giloi, revelation of Hashem, which is a desire to bring everything into existence. What motivated, so to speak, that desire? That's where you get to. That if Shabbos is kept correctly. Now we're going to focus on tefillah, okay? Which is the subject of the attachment. The main points, okay, of tefillah. And we're going to look at a halacha in this week's parsha. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Turn the page. Yes, tefillah. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. No, we're in order. We're good. We're good. Tefillah, okay? Tefillah is, okay, so first of all, turn to the end of your booklet to attachment 4, which is Rav Moshe's entire sheet, okay? It's attachment 4, it's called Partners in Creation, okay? See it? Okay, look at the bottom, the word tefillah, alrighty? He brings many sources, and we're going to look through them, so we can finally get a grasp on what tefillah is supposed to be, okay? And let's just identify all the things that tefillah is not, okay? Tefillah is not reminding Hashem that we need food, clothing, and shelter. Oh, Hashem, I need more parnasa in case you forgot. I need more, right? Tefillah is not groveling to Hashem for our basic needs. Everybody gets oxygen and food and the things they need to live and water. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. That's part of the bria. Okay? Now, it could be that for Am Yisrael, or things are happening and it's somehow there's an interference, the system's not working. Okay? But ideally, everyone's supposed to get it without having to pray for it. Right? This is a fundamental idea. So it's not groveling. If a parent gives birth to a child, the child doesn't have to get on their knees and beg for food. Okay, it should flow naturally. It's part of this system. It should naturally flow. So that's not what tefillah is. Okay, tefillah is not making deals with God, because we are participants in Hashem's running the whole entire system, as we're going to see in a minute. What is tefillah? Well, let's look at the word tefillah. The shorish is pei lamed lamed. Okay, look at Rav Moshe. The word tefillah, I'm on the bottom, meaning tefillah. Gesundheit, everybody. The word tefillah is associated with the words Lhitpallel. Look at the footnote. Sefer Tehillim. Vayamod Pinchas. Lhitpallel v'tetzar hamagefa. We'll see what that means in a minute. And Pinchas got up, and Lhitpallel, and the magefa stopped. The whole plague stopped. Okay. And the next source, Biflilim, source 4, Sefer Shemos, which is actually, everybody turn to it, it's right here, chapter 21, okay? Chapter 22. Okay. We're page 430, okay? Okay. Where am I? No, we're 21, 22. Oh, yeah. What page are we on?
422.
Okay, here we go. 422. So if men shall fight and they collide with a pregnant woman and she miscarries, but there will be no fatality, okay, and he shall surely be punished as the husband of the woman shall cause to be assessed against him, and he shall pay by order of the judges. What does Baflilim mean? Judges. What is the job of the judges? Enforcing law and order. Plilim are judges who enforce law and order. Okay? Lhitpallel is to judge. To judge things, to look at them with the intention of restoring law and order, or identifying law and order. Okay? Next, what do these words mean and how are they connected to tefillin and tefillah? We're not going to deal with tefillin, just tefillah. You could read this. When Yaakov said, okay, when he first saw Yosef, after all those years, source number 5, okay? Vayomer Yisrael Yosef, Re'ei panecha lo pilalti. To see your face, I didn't expect it. I had no plans for this. It wasn't in my, it wasn't in anything that I thought would happen. Okay? He meant that seeing Yosef wasn't something he expected or for what he had planned. Plilim therefore refers to something planned. Law and order are called plilim since they enforce adherence with a predetermined system. You hear? Lhitpallel, plilim, judges, order, enforcing order, expecting things to stay in order. I didn't expect it, lo pilalti, okay? Torah calls judges plilim because they ensure that things proceed according to plan and apply the plan of law. Now, if that's what plilim means and tefillah means, let's go further. Tefillah, when we think about tefillah, we think that we're asking Hashem to generally, if it's bakasha, change the way something's happening. In other words, don't let things continue as is. Change the order. Change the gezerah. Tefillah is called rachamim. Look at the contradictory implications of the word tefillah. It follows that the word tefillah and tefillin are connected to this. Okay, tefillah is, see what's underlined? Tefillah is called rachamim, compassion. Okay, look at the next. How can we reconcile this with tefillah's association with plilim, something going according to plan? Plilim implies that justice, execution according to a predetermined plan, should apply, not compassion, not rachamim. In other words, the system, Chochma. If we tamper with the system, the system doesn't work right. Things start to, it's not so much malfunction, but there's an interference in the proper working of the system, and it has to go to alternative B, which is much more painful, much more unpleasant, because it's medicinal. You know, it's therapeutic. It's not generally good, and we prefer not to go that way. And now we're saying, no, we don't like this therapy. This is too much sorrow. This is too difficult. I'm appealing to your rachamim to let the system flow, despite the fact that I tampered with it. Isn't that what we do? Despite the fact that we tampered with the system and it's not working the way it should, and now there's all these therapeutic measures which are painful, which we call yissurim. Now please take them away and let everything flow, despite the fact that we tampered with the system. How does that work? So one second, let's go through the whole thing because there's so much to do, and then I hope I'll have time. Now, okay, so what is it? Look what it says. Tefillah appears to be a request that Hashem deviates from the system, correct? You see what happens? So what is the resolution between these two, the contradiction? What is the resolution? The next page. Go back to the back of the first page of this book. Okay, go back to, all right? Go back to the first page. But keep your hand on where we were. All right, so look at the first page. This is where Moshe brings down. How does this world operate? How does it work? How does tefillah work? So we know, and here we get to Ratzon and Chochma and how they work together. Okay? Because if you only think about Chochma, then the system is perfect. It's the mind of God. It flows when it's supposed to flow. It doesn't work right when it's not supposed to work right. Then there are restorative measures. Then and then there are individuals who play a major role. Where's Hashem's Ratzon? Where's Hashem just not letting the system work as planned? Overriding the system. Choosing different alternatives in the system. Where's that? No, we said miracles are not. Miracles are according to part of the system. Where's the Ratzon? When Hashem does listen to our tefillah. No, where's the Ratzon? Ratzon, remember. Okay, this is very important to point out. Ratzon is the desire of Hashem. It's the great love of Hashem to have a direct connection to us, to make us the soul of the world, to give the keys to the whole thing into our hands, that we work it together. That's Hashem's Ratzon. And Hashem set up a system, and the system operates. But where does Hashem, in other words, where does that Ratzon still flow, that Hashem wants to have a connection to us? Has the system, does it just work on its own? It has within it the possibility of dealing with every eventuality. As we said, nisim are stipulations in the system. Punishments, what we call punishments, yissurim, are in the system. Everything's in the system. So where's the Ratzon? So the Ratzon is not withholding. The Ratzon is the flow. It's the flow. It's the
Tefillah is our recognition of God's ability to do that. And when we connect with the tefillah,
it's hold it. You're close. The tefillah, read this. Okay, we're gonna read it. It's not so much. You're almost there. Our recognition of
The role that we have.
as holding the keys to the system. Number one, the greatest rachmanis of all, as Rav Moshe says, is that we are the soul of the world. But that's number one. But there's number two. But first look at the pasuk where this all comes from. When Hashem created the world, okay, we read about the entire Bria, which is the Chochma, okay, being put into place. But then at the end of all of it, in Perek Beis in Bereshis, pasuk 5, okay, V'kol siach hasodeh, terem yeh ba'aretz, when no shrub of the field was yet on earth, and no grasses of the field had yet sprouted, because the Lord Hashem had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the soil, in other words, okay? What does that mean? Look in the Rashi. What is the reason that Hashem had not caused it to rain? Okay, there was no man to till the ground. And there was therefore no one to recognize the utility of rain. When Adam was created, however, he realized that it was necessary for the world, and he prayed for it, and it fell so that the trees and the greenery, verdure, sprang forth. What that means is like this, Chazal tell us. Hashem created everything, but everything was beneath the surface. Nothing came into being. Nothing started to exist yet. Hashem hadn't pressed the go button on the whole Bria. There was a Ratzon that to have a Bria, including humanity. And the entire mind of God, Chochma, but the go button wasn't pressed until man came, and there was no one to la'avod es adama, to work the earth. Rashi says, what is la'avod es adama? Avoda means to daven. Avoda shebalev. Man, through tefillah, recognizes that we hold the keys to the entire system. Tefillah is our connecting to Hashem with recognition, first and foremost, that we are in charge of plilin, putting the system in order. Putting and keeping the system in order is our responsibility. Now, as the Nefesh Chaim says, everything we do has effects everywhere, throughout the entire thing, for good and for bad. Lhitpallel. What is hey tough? Hitpa'el. What is the reflexor, which means what? To do it to yourself.
Bounces back.
To do it to yourself. So what does Lhitpallel mean? It means a person stands and asks themselves, how have I been doing in keeping the system in order? Have I been doing a good job? Have I, God forbid, let's be honest with ourselves, not deceive ourselves, which we love to do. I don't know about you, but I love it. How have I been tampering with the system, thinking I could do it better my way, or just not respecting the system at all? And if that's the case, do I deserve to have such responsibility, to have such authority, to have such a role? I'm not taking it seriously. I'm being given this huge responsibility, and I am doing more damage than good, God forbid. How do I justify that? Do I commit myself to securing and strengthening the system? That's Lhitpallel. And when we daven sincerely and we commit ourselves to having a positive effect on the system, and being makabel, that which restores the system, even if it might be painful, knowing that it's all part of connecting eventually to the Ratzon, it'll help open that flow again, okay? And a person is makabel, then they fix the system. Their tefillah fixes the system and things start to go better. But it's not a science. That's what Moshe wanted to know. Show me exactly how it works, because sometimes a person does that and it doesn't look like the system gets better. And Hashem said to Moshe, Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai, it's too big for anybody to see. Hold on, I really want to take questions, but I want everyone to understand the key points here. So look, tefillah activates the system and can restore the system to be more of an expression of Ratzon. Now, rachamim, the greatest rachamim is that Hashem made us partners in His creating this world. And as Rav Moshe, now flip back to Rav Moshe, and then we're going to come back here to the halacha. Look where it says, okay? Look where it says in Rav Moshe on Page 4, okay? See page 4, Moshe in the back? Actually, okay, first turn to page 6. Okay, one more, you see where it's all bolded? Tefillah there, all the way in the back of Moshe's article, page 6. Tefillah therefore has 2 aspects, okay? First, Tefillah itself is rachamim. In other that it's a we. Tefillah itself expresses the ultimate rachamim which Hashem made us as partners. Because of this, one who prays awakens the yachas of rachamim with respect to himself, relationship. Yeah, the yachas that fall backs to him, commensurate to his yachas, his relationship to Hashem. Second, Tefillah brings into reality the pilalti of Hashem. In other words, if you read, you see Hashem. Tefillah brings back in the restoration of the law and order. When a person davens, knowing that they take upon themselves their role and they're makabel, even those parts of what's happening to them or for Am Yisrael. People do, there are tzaddikim that take upon themselves the responsibility for Am Yisrael. They have what's called the neshama klolius. And this is true, they will accept that they will play a role that because they have a more fundamental, more effective, more of an effect, I'd say, on the system because of their greatness. Because they're more attached.
Is martyrdom built in the system?
Martyrdom? People who martyr themselves before they give up their religion, rather die than accept and do the 3 mitzvahs, you know what they're saying? Take my life, I'm not tampering with the system. No way. And that is an act, the great act of actually restoration of the system. Mesiris is a very good point, amazing point. Mesiris nefesh, when a person dies either because they will not violate the system or because they're Jewish, this has a tremendous effect on the overall somehow functioning. We don't see the big picture. Again, this will be only when we're freed of our human limited capacity to see things which is beyond their depth. By the way, when Moshe Rabbeinu asked, Hashem said, "Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai." Okay, a person cannot see me and live. The Chazal tell us there. There's a medrash that says, not when you're living, but ein adam niftar min ha'olam ad sheroeh es hashchina. Nobody leaves this world. No neshama departs until it sees the Shechina. And that's why when a neshama departs, it's getting the beginning of some type of glimpse at the whole thing. And it departs willingly. It's drawn after the Shechina. It's drawn after the Shechina, and it departs, it follows. That's why we do not, there's a minhag, I know we have this minhag, you don't go to the kever for 30 days, you don't disturb the neshama. Okay? It's busy. It's very busy orienting itself to seeing so much that we couldn't see down here. In terms of tefillah, what do we do now in terms of tefillah? And then I will stop. I'll take your questions. Ask them loudly, please, so the microphone can get them. What does tefillah do? Number one, it can restore the system. Okay? It lets the system operate as it should. It's our being makabel upon ourselves that that we don't necessarily, it's not an exact science for us that we can see. So if it doesn't, our situation doesn't change, then that means that our situation as it is, and for us to be makabel it correctly, is what the system needs. Remember Leah. She davened for child after child after child that her situation should be different. She even expressed that wish in her naming of her children. She didn't have her husband's love. By the 4th child, she said, Hapam odes Hashem. Now I just give hodah to Hashem. And it doesn't mean that she got what she was davening for, she got her husband's love. Remember, because she didn't. Because after Rachel died, Yaakov put his residence with Bilhah. She never got that bond. We know all about that with Rachel and Leah and the Tkufos, right? But, of Jewish history, but, what that all means. But, when Leah said, Hapam odes Hashem, she said, okay, good. If this is not what I am getting, if this is not going to be part of my experience, that means that the system requires that I don't have it, And therefore, I'm modeh, and I give hoda'ah and thanks and gratitude for the situation as it is, because that's what needs to be. And she was joyful about it, and she considered the first person to give hoda'ah. And gratitude. Acceptance and gratitude. That's Leah. Hoda'ah is gratitude. Modeh ani. Because this is, I'm getting to play the role I have to play. Look at the halacha. We're going to try to do a halacha every single week. This is from our parsha. Kol almana v'yasom lo tanun. Second, the back of the first page of the whole booklet. You shall not mistreat any widow or orphan. Im anei taneso. If you will mistreat him, all orphans, right? Ki im tza'ak yitzak elai. If they cry to me, shama eshma tzaka. So I want you to know, I will instantly hear their cry. Look at the Ramban. It's not in English. It's not in English. He says the explanation is according to what I see. It says if you mistreat them, all they have to do is cry, nothing else, and there will be instant repercussions. But you should, and Ramban brings it down. I didn't quote the whole thing. That if a person mistreats an orphan or a widow, the repercussion will be that their children will be orphans. And their wives will be widows. And he says, because it'll turn out that Hashem will arrange it, that that person is killed somehow by an enemy, and somehow doesn't become known. So, because the pasuk says, the Torah tells us, you could go look at the whole Ramban here, you could even Google it, that they'll be widows forever. So how does a person be a widow forever if there's no proof that the husband died, correct? So, it says, I will make it, in these cases, that if a person mistreats them, they just cry, and the system, okay, that Hashem made, will ensure, by Hashem's Ratzon, that that person will end up dying by the hands of an enemy that nobody knows about, so their wife will be a widow forever, something like that, right? Now, what about the widow? What about the orphans? Everything has its place in the system. Anything that anybody goes through is part of a huge, complex, grid, so to speak, that we can't possibly see. And if a child is, Hashem knows that somebody's going to end up a widow because they're married to that man, and that, we already talked about this in our speech about Zivug Rishon, Zivug Sheni. At conception, Hashem pairs up a neshama with a body, knowing exactly what that particular child is going to go through, the whole thing. There's no past, present, and future. Hashem, no surprises. Puts a neshama in that body that has to go through that experience. Everything has its place. So now, on the other hand, a person who does this is considered a rasha. You can't say, oh, because it's, everything is in order, we don't become fatalists. The person who does this is a rasha, and they have to be careful not to inflict this kind of pain, but if a person does get pain, they have to know that somehow there's a place for that too. This is the complexity of Ratzon and Chochma that no human being can see. But Hashem told Moshe, and we say it all the time, what drives this whole system is rachamim and chesed, the 13 meters of rachamim, Hashem, kol racham, l'chan. That's the response Moshe got when he asked this question. Now, so Ramban says, most people can turn to someone else to defend them, but they have no one to defend them, so their tefillah goes straight to me. I want to give one more mashal, and then we'll close and have questions. There are a gazillion variables in the system, which is why we can't understand the whole thing. One mashal, not a perfect mashal at all, okay? That the human being starts out in our earliest moments as stem cells. Correct? Does anyone know how stem cells function? And that's when we harvest them, and they're so useful. So the earliest cells are stem cells. What are they? They have every, your long DNA chain with every little thing that could ever happen to you, and it's like miles long if you print it out on paper. A person's genetics, a person's DNA just is the most complex system in the world. And all their chromosomes, our genes, right, have packed into a cell. Stem cells mean that every cell of a stem cell has the capacity to do every single function in the body. But all the options are turned off, except one, let's say liver function, or some part of liver function, and that cell does just that. But technically, It could do everything. And that's why we harvest it and we can turn stem cells into, who knows, everything that a person can need, everything. So, lahavdil, in this system that Hashem created out of Chochma, there is endless options and varieties of how it could work and how it could trigger things. So the Ratzon of Hashem, which created the Chochma, created the system, is always operating. So to the point that Ramban, who's a Makobel, says, actually, the interplay of Ratzon and Chochma is so great that you could say on the highest level that every little thing that happens is the Ratzon of Hashem. And actually there is no system. That's on the highest level. We call that, there are people that operate when they're so meticulous with the system and they are so careful and they're kadoshim, holy people. They get, as we always know, hashgacha pratis, which means personal attention, which is according to madriga of a person. So yes, there's a possibility for the system to work perfectly. There's possibility for the system to work in a lot of different ways that no human being can get a grasp of, but it could all be, it is all part of Hashem's Chochma. What do we do with this? It's so big. And yet there's always Ratzon of Hashem, and the ultimate Ratzon of Hashem is that we should let the system run properly, and we don't have to resort to all those alternatives to what to do when it's not running right. Okay? So what do we do here to sum it all up? This week's Parsha, Am Yisrael said, like my grandfather used to say, simple, that's it, we're in. We handcuff ourselves to Hashem, as my grandfather's mashal, and we just throw away the key. Amen. No, we're not supposed to be battling with ourselves every single day. Should I keep this mitzvah? Shouldn't I keep this mitzvah? I know I kept it yesterday, but today I don't know if I can. No, once you're in, you're just in. You accept that it works, and that you want to be someone who helps it work better and doesn't tamper with it. And that in the end, if we let it run as best as it can, then we will experience a connection, a yachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we do. A person, that's called having emunah. And we'll end with this one last thing. When they got to the Yam Suf, and they knew that there's no one to turn to but Hashem, and they realized that we better just accept the way Hashem is doing everything, because there's no options. And they started to daven. Davening is knowing that Hashem runs everything, and when you daven with total emunah, you become the partner with God. You get the keys to the system. Hashem says, don't daven, go. Just walk. It's going to work. The system's going to work. How does the system work? What does Rambam tell us? What's the right way the system is supposed to work? Tzadik v'tovlo, rasha v'ralo. It's supposed to work like the bracha says it should. And that's what happened on the Yam. It worked. When we daven and we have total emunah, really emunah, and we trust and accept the system, we become partners, we activate the system, and it works. Right? And now